invited to the first Preparing Future Faculty event for fall 2015. I'm excited to see a really good turnout today. Thank you for coming. Before we start, Dr. Witovich has a very quick announcement about graduate student organization.
Okay. Thanks, folks. And we're
the camera's there.
Oh, there's a camera there. Very good. Okay. Folks, we are, if you don't know me, I'm Dr. Robert Witovich. I am the Associate Vice Provost for Graduate Studies, and welcome to the first PFF event of the year. I think this is one of the most important things we do for our graduate students, and I'm glad to see all of you participating, and please spread the word to other students about the opportunities that PFF provides you. That's my first plug. My second plug is this. Our graduate student organization is in the process of reorganizing. This is the umbrella group for all of the graduate students on the Old Dominion University campus and distant students as well. We're having an organizational meeting on October 22nd at 3 o'clock in the River Rooms at Webb Center. The rooms toward the back behind the North Cafeteria. October 22nd at 3 o'clock. If you're interested in meeting other graduate students, as events like this permit you to do, or allow you to do, if you're interested in taking on a leadership role or just developing some organizational skills or really just doing something other than being in the lab or in the library or going to whatever work assignment you happen to have, GSO is a terrific creative and social outlet. And so we will have notices coming out on the University Announcements page. We'll send out a reminder via Hobson so you get those notifications as well. But just keep in mind, October 22nd, 3 o'clock, River Rooms, Graduate Student Organization, reorganization meeting. So in other words, we're trying to reboot the group this year, get some activities going, and most important, identify some future leaders. Okay, thanks. And you have a terrific panel today.
Thank you, Robert.
Sure.
Very briefly, I wanted to introduce, we have 4 awesome panelists today. We have Dr. Phil Langlais from the College of Sciences, Dr. Ed Gomez from the College of Education, Carla Harrell from the College of Arts and Letters, and Dr. Nihal, Dr. C,
yes,
from the Norfolk State University School of Business. Dr. Langlais was kind enough to volunteer to moderate, to present first and then moderate the discussion. So, Phil, it's all
You
yours.
wanted each of us to give a brief introduction of ourselves
That would be
besides...
great.
It's a letter.
Okay.
With a little
I'm Phil Langlais. I've got a long history in academia. And in fact, I'm retiring at the end of this academic year. I have been up the academic administrative ladder as well as a very long history of doing research. I've led 2 lives in research. One is a cognitive neuroscientist, and the second one is interested in ethics and decision-making within academic fields, and particularly research and teaching. And I do research on that to try and understand why people behave the way they do in the context of the dilemmas that we have in the context of conducting research, et cetera. I used to be the vice provost for graduate studies in research here at Old Dominion University, stepped down from that a few years ago. And I'm very proud of the PFF, and Elaine is here, who has been instrumental in getting this program going. And I'm happy to say when I was vice provost, I threw money into this program to try and help it to move along because I think it's really important. Okay, now turn it over.
I'm Carla Harrell, and I am from Arts and Letters, but specifically in the Department of Communication and Theater Arts. And my main area that I teach and research in is gender communication and reducing miscommunication by understanding the different ways that we are socialized to communicate and how we employ that in different contexts. And I also advise for a department that's about 800 majors.
Okay, I'm Dr. C from Norfolk State University. I teach at the School of Business. My area of specialization is organizational science and strategic management. But how I am related to ethics is through business ethics, because I teach junior level business ethics classes to my students. And I'm also a co-advisor of a business honors council And the purpose of the council is to educate students, our fellow students, in ethical manners in business. My research is not in the ethics area because I do research in entrepreneurship and strategic management and a little bit in organizational behavior. But I just minored in my PhD program in psychology, so I'm kind of related to everybody here. So I'm thrilled to be here. So it's going to be a great discussion, hopefully. And if you want to refer to me as Dr. C, that will be very acceptable.
My name is Ed Gomez, and I am in the College of Education. I teach in the Department of Human Movement Sciences, specifically within the Park Recreation and Tourism Studies program. I am from Boston, so I have a slight accent. Just insert an R if you don't understand it. And my research background is on race and ethnic issues as they relate to leisure and open spaces. And specifically, I've been, that was what I also have a second career. That was career one. Career two, I slowly transitioned into urban parks issues in particular, and how it affects sense of community and the ethics related to that. And I teach the diversity class for our majors, and it's been an interesting set of ethical prompts, and I'm glad I have these that I'll be using, not these, but some like these, and altering them to suit our specific field. Thank you for having me.
Okay, the format for today is that I'm going to sort of just warm you up to the topic and talk about what some of the challenges, dilemmas, areas are that we face in teaching and advising. And then we're going to go through some case studies. Right? And so the cases are in your, are on the printouts that you have. We're also going to have them up on the screen. Okay? We also have participants that are not here with us physically, but by video streaming. And so we will be getting input and questions and responses from people outside of this room. And we is going to help us to integrate that. So my role would be to try and be sure that we get good participation here, but also good participation and input from people that are out there in the more virtual world. Okay. I've talked with our panelists, and we really think that we ought to allow you to start the discussion of the case studies. I'm sure the four of us could just go on and on and on and on and on these, but that's not the point. The point is to get you invested, to understand what the issues are that you see in these cases, and how you think you could go around answering the question that appears at the end of each of these. And then if you're asking for help, and et cetera, the panel, I'm sure we're more than willing to dive in and give you our perspective on that, but we'd really much rather have you become active participants rather than us just being talking heads. I know I don't like to do that, and I know the rest of the panel does not as well. All right, so let me just warm us up to the topic, okay? And talk about some of the, and this is by far not an exhaustive list of the ethical issues and challenges that you'll face in the context of teaching, but there's some of the most common ones and perhaps some of the more challenging areas in which you will run into difficulty. One is competency, okay? And the competency means a number of things. One of them is, how do you determine what your expertise is in that subject matter that you are being asked to give by way of a course, by way of advising, helping students in particular areas. And this is can be a very challenging task. How do you know that you've got the level of competency for the level of instruction that you've been asked to give? Okay? And there are the routine ways. You've taken courses, maybe you've got a degree, and so on and so forth. But sometimes it's not as clear-cut as that. Sometimes you're asked to develop a new course, put things together, and you should be asking yourself, do I really have the skill sets and the knowledge to put together a course that's appropriate for the students? Okay? So this can be a challenge in terms of knowledge of the particular subject matter. Also competency in terms of your pedagogical effectiveness. Okay? You may be brilliant, and I'm sure a lot of us have probably had instructors in our training who were brilliant but couldn't teach worth a darn. Okay? They were terrible instructors. They were deadpan. They just read off of notes, didn't animate, weren't passionate. They just getting the job done and then they walk out the door. Okay? So you may be competent in terms of knowledge, but you may be terrible in terms of pedagogical style. And you need to know, am I competent enough in that area as well? Do I have the skill sets? Do I know enough what works in this particular course, in this particular environment, for these particular students? Okay? Competency also will rear its head in terms of conflicts of commitment. So you may have skill, knowledge, you may have had good pedagogical skills, but you may be overloaded. You may have yourself spread so thin that you really cannot give the time in preparation, office hours, answering emails, dealing with issues. So part of competency is also, do you have the time? Have you balanced your workload adequately so that you can give the appropriate time to your students? Okay? Another challenging area is grading essays, oral presentations, and papers. Okay? Developing that set of uniform standards and applying them uniformly to all students is a challenge. Okay? I'll leave it at that because some of our cases get at that specifically. Dealing with student dishonesty is another challenge. Okay? And student dishonesty comes in a whole variety of different forms. Okay? And one will ask oneself, am I spending more time trying to detect whether these people are behaving honestly or dishonestly? Okay? And how do I know for sure? Now, if somebody has plagiarized 95% of their paper with other stuff out there and, turn it in or safe assign is just giving you all that evidence, well, you're okay. All right, now you've got something to deal with. But not all dishonesty takes on that form. Okay? And so when students are doing this, taking an exam, you really get a little concerned, well, what is really going on? Okay, so then you start to walk up the aisle, and all of a sudden they simply change their position, and you don't see them doing this anymore. Do you then yank their paper and say, you were copying, you were cheating? These are tough issues to deal with. And knowing when you're sure, and how do you know that you're sure, and how do you know you're taking the appropriate action can be challenging for all of us, all right? Class participation and discussion is another area, okay? Setting appropriate expectations and assessment for class participation and discussion. We all know we always have 10% of the class that will participate, the other 90% is simply sitting there. Okay? How do you deal with that? Do you give the individuals who are actively engaged extra credit points? Or do you simply let them participate, let the other ones be more passive? Because we don't honestly know exactly what's going on in their mind. They may be engaged just as much as the ones that are verbal, but we don't necessarily know that. That's one of the problems. Okay? And when you have got group projects and peer evaluations, with groups, how do you know that each member of that group is equally participating? And how do you grade that appropriately? Those are challenges. Accuracy. Okay? Does your syllabus accurately reflect the requirements in the content? Building a really good, honest, fair syllabus is a critical element. Okay? And changing the schedule and changing the topics throughout the semester can be really disruptive to students. Okay? So being able to put together a syllabus, a good one, is a challenge. It's not easy. Okay? And sometimes you get snow cancellations, and then you've got to change things all around. Okay? And that becomes a challenge in and of itself, but that's Mother Nature, and that's something you can deal with, but you have to deal with it. Exaggerating, minimizing, spinning, or otherwise bending facts to suit your biases. This can be a real challenge for us, because we are human. Okay? We have our preferences. But these preferences may not actually be an accurate reflection of the facts and the content that you're trying to convey. So you've got to weigh your own preferences here. Okay? But be sure that you're accurately representing the state of knowledge. Okay? That your syllabus says that you're. And this gets to it more specifically. Personal values, prejudices, and biases. It can be political, ideological, religious, and you can go on. We are human again. Okay? But again, if we want to be competent, we've got to be sure that these are not influencing the accuracy and the appropriateness of the way in which we're conveying information to our students. Okay? And those of us who've taken my graduate course in ethics, okay, one of the first things we start off with is knowing yourself. Do you honestly know what your biases and prejudices and your ideologies are? And I can tell you the students who've taken my course, after the end of doing a self-reflection, they go, I had no idea about this. I hadn't really thought about these particular parts. So knowing yourself is a critical. And then academic freedom. What is that? It's something we all hold up. But does that get to mean you can say whatever you want to say, conduct courses and do the way you want to do it? I'd say no. But there has got to be some sort of enterprise on your part. You've got to be able to engage yourself in this. And so this probably is the sum of all these other things, really, is the sense of academic freedom. You will hear that in academic institutions all the time. And you're going to be challenged in terms of where does academic freedom cross over the line of being inaccurate, being disrespectful, and so forth. And I think that's a challenge we all face. So there are some ethical principles I think that we can all fall back on. And I'm going to give you a list of standards at the end here of organizations. Beneficence. Do good. If you're making a decision, make sure that that decision is doing the best good for the individuals involved in the particular situation as you can possibly control. Its counterpart is non-maleficence. Avoid doing harm. So if you're looking at, here are the things that I think I want to decide. You need to weigh how much good is going to come from your decision versus how much harm. And we'll never have one where it's an absolute no-brainer, everything's completely good and there's going to be no adverse effect. The world isn't structured that way. But we need to be looking at balancing so that we can get as much good in our decision, the outcome, as we do harm, okay? Doing things with integrity, acting fairly, justly, and honestly. Respect for student autonomy and independence, okay? I'm going to talk a little bit more about autonomy, then I'm going to shut up. Oh no, I'm not. I'm going to back up. Autonomy, okay? One of the challenges we have, okay, is my role with you, okay, is to help you to become as independent as possible, but engaging where you are relative to your ability to be independent. Okay? If it's an undergraduate student, you need to set the level of independence on their part, appropriate for where they are, engaging where they are, in terms of their ability to gather information and to proceed properly on their own, is a real challenge. You're going to have students who be coming in your office all the time, and after a while you begin to say, I'm not writing this, you're not writing this paper, I am. Okay? And you're not helping that student to develop autonomy. And you have to gauge that, and not everybody is the same. Some people start off with a high level of autonomy, and you don't have to worry about them, but you've got a lot of others in your class that are way down there, and you need to hold their hand. The question is, how long do you hold their hand, and how much help do you give them? And that's a challenge. But the goal here is to respect the need for their developing autonomy and independence. Now, for those of you who would like to look at codes of ethics for educators, there are 3 organizations that have really great sets of them. The American Association for University Professors, AAUP, has a whole code of professional ethics for educators. The same is true for the National Education Association, and our beloved American Psychological Association has a complete set. So I've sort of boiled down the essence of what you will find in some of these as a much longer discussion and list. So you can always go back to these. Okay? All right. So we're going to tackle the first case. I'll give everybody a minute or two to read it. And then I'd like some volunteers to jump in and perhaps start with answering the question, do you allow her to do extra credit assignment? But then what I'd like you to do, if you have an answer, I'd like to justify your answer. Why? Why are you either going to or not going to? Or if you've got conditions, why do you have particular conditions that you would impose in answering that question?
I have a Did we say on our syllabus that we are offering extra credit? Because if we don't say it on the syllabus, you know.
Could we just start with maybe a different approach? What is the problem here? Why do we think that this is an ethical concern, right? Should we start with that one? Because you know what, if you don't see any problem, we can go either way. But what will be the ethical concern here?
I think that the conflict is between doing good and being fair. So I see it as a conflict between the 4 points that Dr. mentioned. Out of that, I see a conflict between doing good, beneficence, and then being fair with all the students. So that's a conflict in my mind.
What job is this a prerequisite for? Because if it's something, like brain surgery, I'd be a little bit more hesitant to answer than if it was something that had less responsibility to society.
So just avoiding harm situation here?
No, I'm just wondering what job does this class, qualify her to perform? Because that would impact my decision.
So that will be one of the contingencies we need to just consider.
It might not even be really related to what she wants to go into, but the diploma has so many passing credits, so it might just be that she needs a 3-credit class to have a passing grade. So it may not actually be relevant to what she wants to do. Just knowing the fact that she needs a diploma.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah. My decision making is on the same line as doing good and being fair. I feel like the ethical decision is to not allow the extra credit because other students did not have this opportunity as well. But my moral decision is I'll then ruminate about this and this woman and her issues for however long.
So your decision is going to harm her in a significant way, so you don't want that to happen.
Right.
I think if you're going to offer it to her, you have to offer it to the entire class. Because even though hers is passing versus failing, someone will probably have the same strong feelings just regardless like a B versus an A. A lot of students take B's really harshly on a personal level. So I think if you're going to offer it to her, then you have to do it.
What if you don't have time to offer the extra credit and it's not meaningful time for the others to do it?
And I don't know if I would.
And I think it's an extenuating circumstance, so I don't think you need to offer it to everybody. And to me, the determining factor was the fact that she contacted you before grades were submitted. So it's not, I don't think maybe she didn't know she was going to fail. She just let the professor know that this was the situation. And then she found out she was going to fail and then asked for credit. So I think that kind of makes a difference in your decision too. She said, oh crap, I just failed, and now all of a sudden I have all these excuses. Then it changes the situation. Do we need to back check and see if her story is legitimate, or are we going with her word? But I think that the fact that she mentioned it prior to seeing the grade kind of gives you a little more information.
I think.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Well, yeah, put your hand up so we don't have a whole bunch of people jumping in all at the same time. Go ahead.
I tend to agree with my colleague that offering extra credit, if you're not offering it to everybody else, is an unfair advantage to her. In her favor, at this point, it says she's about to be a graduate. So she has 3.5 years of proven performance, we're assuming, coming up to this point. If this were a freshman in this situation, I would probably say you probably just need to rehack the clock and start all over again. Again, extra credit is more problematic. Maybe you can go back into some of her prior work, and perhaps you could regrade some of that work with a little bit more generous eye, and that, if we're talking about a few points or to try to get her to a D minus, a D minus, you're not exactly handing her a huge favor by giving her a D minus.
I also feel like if she's doing so poorly in the course to where she's about to fail it, that she should know prior to the end of the course that she has been struggling, and that she should have brought something up earlier in the semester in regards to even just asking for help on an assignment or after class sort of office hours to help her figure out the material more, and not wait till the last minute before grades come out.
All right. I think there's a fallacy here that it's you as a professor's fault that her life is falling apart. I feel as a professor, just like some other people share, that she has had all this time to really,
get this degree, and if I were her therapist, would it be my fault if you know, something bad happened to my client? You know, it's almost like you have this working relationship with this person. You're business associates in a sense. You're not. I cannot what happens in her life outside of my classroom shouldn't be my responsibility. My responsibility is to give a grade to a student, and that's her grade, and I'm giving it. I don't give it to her. That's another fallacy. She earned a grade. It's the grade she earned.
And then you.
I agree with the earning the grade, which is why I would be very nervous to go back and regrade a paper with the idea of I know I'm going to be giving points that I hopefully for a reason was valid in taking away. But I interpreted this a little differently than you. I interpreted this as she got her grades, she realizes now that she failed. So now she came to you to say, I left my husband, all these things happened. Now I see I'm not passing the course. So to me, that was a post hoc kind of.
Yeah, it says she calls first. Then it says when she learned, then she contacts him again. That's how I read it. So she calls you just before you turn in your grade, reveals that she just left her abusive husband. When she learns, she has not passed the course, she requests extra credit. So I look at that as two separate situations. So
It's hard to know.
yeah.
Well, you've been with this student has been in your class all semester. This is at the end of the semester. If she is an abused wife, you know there's something going on, and you're going to be able to see it in her work throughout the entire semester. You're going to see it. You're going to see it in her work. You're going to see it in how she reacts in the classroom. You're going to see how she reacts to other people in the class. You're going to know this student might be distance learning. You don't see her.
There was a hand over here that wanted.
I just don't agree with that point at all.
Good.
I think that there are people out there that can have extremely horrible things going on in their life and are just very high functioning. And you would have no way of knowing that something is going on in their life.
People cope things differently, right?
Yes.
Well, if we're going on the standards of beneficence versus malfeasance, I think the only thing we've identified that actually produces harm is that it's unfair to the other students. So has any other student either failed or come asking for special consideration?
Do other people see other areas of harm from in this situation, a potential harm in this situation?
Well,
Other than to
she's
the
not
woman?
qualified for this job she's going to get. She's going to do harm. And that was, I think, one of my colleagues' points. Is she trying to become a brain surgeon, or is she going to be, working with the sanitation department?
But
And not giving her the extra credit, if the scenario played out, she would not get the diploma, she would not get the job, which means, therefore, her children might be harmed. So that's another.
her family would be harmed.
Oh, yes, a new voice.
So in terms of the harm, I'm just thinking too that this may set a precedent in terms of my future interaction with students, in that she may pass on the word, listen, if you have problems, just speak with this professor. She may be able to help you. And so that may affect how I deal with other students who fall into this situation and affect my credibility.
Go ahead.
Is that a bad thing? That to other students go and say, this instructor is willing to work with you if you have a major problem in your life. The instructor and professor is willing to work with you. I mean, if you look at ODU policies and procedures, there are extenuating circumstances, and the students have to apply for that, and so they have to say they withdraw from a course after a certain date. There are extenuating circumstances. They fill out a form, they submit all their paperwork and documentation, and then they're approved to withdraw from a course without a failing grade. So that could be an option for extenuating circumstances, that she needs to go through the procedures of the policies of the university to withdraw from a course, not receive the failing grade, and then maybe she has to take a course again, but she's not receiving the failing grade, and it doesn't affect her, and then she doesn't have, that's a university policies that could actually help the student too.
Something one of my colleagues up here said about, if we don't let her pass this, then she doesn't get this, she doesn't get the job, and then it affects her child. As the professor, that's not our problem, that's hers, right? Yeah. I mean, isn't it? And I think she said something similar. I mean, it's not it's not our problem. We're not the one who's signed up for the course.
Can I
Go
remind?
ahead. Did you want to say something? No?
I agree with that. I don't think we can look at whether this affects if you can get a diploma and what type of job you want. It's not my subjective decision to say, oh, you get to go home to parents who are paying for your house, so I'm not going to give you extra credit, and you are going to be without a job, you can't afford your home then, so you get the extra credit. It's your grade is dependent on your performance in this course. And I always go back to when you have a situation like this, the number of people who had all the events in their life that they struggled with that you don't know about, and they still managed to get the work done. And they had good grades throughout the process or the course, and they are graduating now on their own.
Could I interject something here? Even Pope said, right, just apply golden rule to your life. Would you be treated like this if you just go, if you have had the problem with your life and you just basically go to your teacher and ask her help? Would you be treated like you want to just treat your student, right? You just get treated the way you just wanted to be treated, right? So would you just appreciate a teacher not giving you extra credit if you're just going through a major trouble in your life?
I'll never ask.
No,
Yeah.
that's not what the course
I don't
grade
want
is
to put the
dependent on.
teacher in this position. Absolutely not.
Abby?
Well, I think Melissa's point is interesting, which is whenever I'm in a situation trying to make a decision, I always imagine how many students are in the same situation as that student and just didn't choose to speak up about it. And are you giving unfair advantages to students that are more willing to ask compared to students who maybe go in the same circumstances that don't? And related to that, throughout the semester, usually I try to encourage students either this extra credit throughout the semester that they have an opportunity to earn, or if there's not, I just remind them almost weekly, like, oh, if you didn't like your grade on this test, we should talk about how you can study better for future ones. And so if I kind of offer this help systematically throughout the semester, I have a little less
Pressure on the end.
yeah, at the end I'm a little more like, well, you had all of these opportunities that you ignored, so I'm more confident saying no to be friends.
It doesn't say that she ignored them. She was doing it.
Can you say it a little louder?
It doesn't say that she ignored all the extra credit or anything like that. She could maybe just done really bad on the exams or something, and somehow didn't pass the class by like a couple points.
Yeah, there are some things we don't know that, would help us to make a better decision. Has she been doing poorly throughout the entire semester? Under that circumstance, then both the instructor and the student has some responsibility to be aware of this person's not doing well and try to intervene on both are responsible to intervene to try and determine if in fact it's related to this abusive relationship and all of these other things. Then perhaps the university and other things should be done to try and help this individual, because she's got more of a problem than just trying to do well in the course. She's got a lot of other things going on that probably, and I would be asking, is she doing poorly in other courses as well? And we don't know. These are the things that oftentimes come up in these cases. This is information you'd love to have, but you don't have. Or maybe you should have acquired that information to make a better sense of it. So I think responsibility is on both parts. I mean, this isn't just 1 minute in a course. We're talking about something that's gone over for 15 weeks. And so there should have been a fair amount of assessment going on throughout that period of time on both sides, both the student and the instructor. Yes?
I was just going to mention as a resource the ombuds person here on campus. That is somebody who can gather information and give the family members some support in this kind of situation.
I'm actually glad she mentioned that, because you may or may not, as someone who has worked with people in abusive relationships and situations past, they can extremely pass for being very, very normal, and you may not pick up on any clues. So, but when that individual finally has the courage to actually admit it and announce it to you, it's a kind of a breakthrough moment for that individual. The ombudsperson can help out. And even if you don't do, because it could have been maybe this person missed an exam because of that, And in that case, if they do go to the ombudsperson, they do allow for certain things to happen where they can give an incomplete for the course and she can make up that missed work, which is still the same work that the students did in the class, but she has extenuating circumstances, but that is a due course. It's like that's specifically there for those kinds of extenuating circumstances, then you are actually obligated, once she does go, you should make that as a choice.
Accommodation.
Make this. I cannot personally do anything because of the way the course is structured and it's too late in the class, but you do have this option. If you go to the ombudsperson's office, then I can help you out in other ways that I wouldn't be able to otherwise. Mm-hmm. And one of those is to revisit certain things that you may have done poorly on because of the fact that you've been in this situation that you finally just got out of. So so there are some ways that you can do to mitigate that would still be fair, but I do agree that if you are going to offer the extra credit, I personally don't like extra credit, but if you do offer it, you have to offer it to everybody.
It appears, I like your comment, and I like the comment there about the withdrawal grade or the incomplete grade. To me, it appears that there's an urgency here, that an incomplete would still not give it a diploma. The withdrawal grade would still not give it a diploma. The fail grade. So I like the accommodating, absolutely, and I'll be happy for her to retake my class next semester and give the incomplete or the withdrawal. But am I misunderstanding? There appears to be an urgency here for this to happen now, and for me to do this extra credit or have these special circumstances happen now, for her to earn this diploma now, and then there's no other ways to mitigate, right?
I've had this situation, not with this, but in terms of someone needed the diploma so they can get the job. And it happened when you're finishing up your internship, but you haven't finished up completely your hours, and so therefore your grade has to be an incomplete. You don't repeat the class. All an incomplete does is that it allows you to go into the next semester and finish up whatever you didn't, but they retrograde your diploma. So you'll still, all it required was a letter from me as her advisor, actually his advisor, to basically say this person will graduate as soon as these hours are finished, and the diploma will be conferred, blah. And that was all he needed in that situation. So sometimes it's just a matter of the letter. So there are a lot of things that you can do that are outside of the actual normal classroom sort of such situation that you can use to help the individual that's not necessarily class related.
Yeah. Does any of the other panel members want to make comments?
My general comment is I see really the teaching philosophy playing a role. I see that some people might just think that is it a bad thing to just help out a student without just basically harming the rest of the students in a significant way? Or some of us are just really working from the fairness point of view a little bit more strongly, I guess. And it is going to be your, I think, teaching philosophy, what just basically... some instructors are from more compassionate, just helping out point of view. Some others are just focusing more on fairness. And none of them are just bad point of views, I guess. Or some are just more balanced than the other ones. But these things really happen. Actually, I have just basically encountered these situations more than enough. And I found myself in a bound. And my biggest concern was the fairness to the rest of the students. And you need to just evaluate every situation differently. And all the contingencies you just mentioned play a role. Previous performance, if you have known the students well enough, or what happens to my future students? Are they going to just take advantage of this single experience and just use it against me? All these things, and you need to make decisions really, really in a short time. And that's why I think a very, very nicely played out scenario. And it is going to happen to you if you're going to be a teacher in the future.
And your approach for change with each experience, because you'll choose a course of action, and like somebody said, sit with it, and will that be something you think about for the next couple of semesters? Then that will affect you the next time that you have to make such a decision. So It's not a hard, fast rule, at least in my experience with this.
You'll also notice yourself changing policies in your syllabus to start accounting for certain contingencies. I never included the ombudsperson information in my syllabus. Now it is because of these exact issues.
Or, as she said, just kind of building up those extra credit assignments in your syllabus in a way that at the end you don't have to be in that bound. So you can always say that, or you encourage your students if they have problems early on so that you can work with them in a different way. Right. Or just introduce these extra credit assignments so that they can just build their work and they don't wait to the last minute. So all these are kind of try and error to your profession or your field, and it is perfected over the years. Perfection is kind of a very ambitious word, but it just gets better, let me say.
And also building into your assessments, frequent assessments throughout the semester. Relying on 2 exams as the only way to assess performance can really set yourself up and the students for lots of difficulties. You don't know if they're having problems acquiring the information, whether their learning styles are appropriate. So, I mean, I've learned over the years to insert multiple quizzes throughout the entire semester. Sometimes in some courses, as many as 14 or 15 of them, and with 4 exams along the way, so that by 4 weeks into the semester, I've got 3 quizzes and an exam, or maybe more than that, and I've got a pretty good idea, and the student should have a pretty good idea. Are they performing? Are they actually getting this? And you can then, and again, I think something to build into the way in which you deal with your courses, is to actually make a handout or reach out to every one of those students that are failing or really on that border. Don't wait until the last week of the semester. Do it fairly early, 2 or 3 weeks in. If you know students are not doing well, reach out to them. Now, my experience has been is that maybe 2/3 won't respond to that reach out, okay? But you've made the effort. You've been responsible to reach out to them. You're being fair to them to say, look, I know things aren't going well, and I'm here. Come see me. Let's talk about this. Then again, midway through, you get the same thing. It's usually the same students that fall into that. I mean, the ones that do poorly tend to do it throughout. And so then if you get to the end and the student says, geez, I failed and I don't know what went wrong, I'll say, I'm sorry. You've been given lots of opportunities, both in terms of quizzes, exams. I've been reaching out to you. You've not responded to that. It's your responsibility at this point. You have not taken advantage of it. So I think building your syllabus so that you can monitor students and give them the opportunity, which then you're not faced with a student that out of the blue comes at you and says, my God, I failed this course, and I'm now in this crisis. I can't get this job. I can't feed my kids, etc. You can avoid that. Or at least you can say, I have done everything possible to help you under these circumstances. I can't do this for you. This is a partnership. This is a contract. You and I have responsibilities and obligations to each other. I will do the best to meet up to my obligations. You need to be responsible to live up to yours. And if you set your syllabus and your course up that way, you can be in a good place with a situation like this.
So you will not give the extra?
What's that?
You will not give her the extra?
No, I would not. But anyways, okay, we need to move to another one. But that was very good discussion.
Yes, I
That was
loved it.
very, very good discussion. You hit on a number of very important, interesting aspects of this.
I think I would.
All right.
I'm just
So let's go to the second one, keeping promises implied and stated. And I think it was a good suggestion. Let's see if we can identify what the issues, the problems are. Okay?
Ugh, this is a bummer.
You don't need to bother taking it to the students. I already know what that looks good.
So whenever somebody is ready to, what's the issue? What's the problem? What do we have to deal with here?
I guess my first question is, do they have to purchase the book? If they have to purchase it, it's another answer, I think.
Okay. And purchasing it may do harm to them by adding an additional cost, which they may not be able to
They did not anticipate
afford,
in
and
the beginning.
they didn't know in advance. I saw a hand up over here. Yes.
Okay, in keeping with the idea of a contract, a syllabus is a contract between you and students. So it seems that you need to have a meeting of minds and maybe approach your students as far as this is what's come up. It's not on my syllabus. Can we have a discussion to see if we want to add this? Because then, in my mind, you have a meeting of the minds because you're asking them beyond the drop add date. You're changing the contract, and they formed a knowledgeable decision on taking your class based on that contract and based on the coursework. So it seems to me that it would be maybe more ethical to approach the class and maybe ask them.
Go ahead.
I can suggest it to the students rather than adding it, and tell them about the importance of the books and let them, if they're really interested in it, go for it, and probably in the next semester onwards, then I can add it. So I can suggest the book to the students this semester.
I'm wondering if it depends whether these are grad students or undergrads, because I think we have a lot more leeway when it comes to our grad students than we do with our undergrads. I would never put it on. I would never bring it to an undergrad class. Graduate students, I'd probably discuss it.
I'm really excited. This one seems easy for me. Because my teaching philosophy is a lot about fostering a general excitement about science and new information that we're discovering every day. So to me, I would not even consider adding this to my syllabus because I, again, view it as a contract. And especially if they'd have to purchase the book, there's no way that I would make them do that when I had them agree to not having to do that. So I would read the book, summarize all of the information that I thought was most important and tell them about it and not test them on it, but it's important for them to know it because this is profound, new, important information. And then next semester, if it's already a heavy reading course, I would take out some information, put in this book, and change everything for the next semester. But there's no way that I would test them on this material if it's not in the syllabus.
So not much discussion. Can I prompt you with something? How about other aspects of changing your syllabus? Maybe the book decision is kind of a very important decision and it has some complications. But what about faculty members changing parts of their syllabus throughout the semester? Dr. Phil said maybe changing the dates of assignments, not weather-related, but sometimes you cannot catch up with the work or something happens, the students takes more than necessary. So how much freedom do you think an instructor should have on the syllabus?
And sometimes I think it's necessary to push things back. I don't think you should put forward than what you've said, but because of weather and stuff, like this past flight that we had, with one of the ITA for the test that we moved back because they couldn't come in. And so sometimes you do miss material where I guess you could either take that out of the test, move it to the next test maybe, but I don't think you should be moving forward. Sometimes you do have to move it back if you're not on time.
Which is typically appreciated.
Yeah.
Whenever I've had to move something back.
Push back more than what it's already put as. I think normally they like that.
Abby?
I taught an online course where a lot of students worked full-time jobs, and sometimes they had to ask off time to work on specific assignments. So if I changed the deadline, even if I was making it later, they were like, well, I still have to work on those dates. So you might consider at least making the material available for them to stick to the original schedule themselves, even if you move the due date, so they can turn it in up to a week later if they still have everything they need if they plan on working on it at that time. So if you do move the dates, you might work in that flexibility.
Go ahead. Yes.
I
Yeah.
got somebody.
Yeah.
I've been in classes, and I'm in classes now where this is a big issue, and the problem of reputation comes around, where certain professors get a reputation for being disorganized and changing things at a whim to the point where students won't do assignments until they're absolutely due, because either they get changed, modified, or just kind of get left by the wayside. So the time and effort you invested into preparing to do the assignment, doing the next assignment, that's a big thing to consider. Like if you're a person that constantly changes and modifies, students will throw their hands up and be like, yeah, screw it.
I don't know. I want to say that's a different situation. I think this is more of a structural change as opposed to someone who's so disorganized. But I do get your point. I do get your point. I too would be irritated.
We?
Well, I think there's another factor that we might want to think about also in terms of, sometimes you're teaching a class for the first time. And anytime I teach a class for the first time, I try to make sure that my students know this is the first time we're teaching this. There is going to be some trial and error and things that work and things that don't work. And so I say I want to use your feedback, if we need to make changes to the syllabus or to the schedule or to the assignments as the course progresses. So usually for me, that first time I teach the course, the syllabus isn't as much as a contract as we're kind of feeling our way over the course of the semester, and then it gets better as you teach the course more and more. So that first time, the course usually ends up being much more of a partnership with the students. But you also have to be, for the students out front, they need to know that this is the first time you're teaching the course, or that this is a substantial revision to the course, that you want their input and you appreciate their input.
And I think level of course comes into play there because I teach a 200 level course. I would never ask for that collaboration, but the upper level courses, I think that would afford a better product perhaps.
I think to piggyback on what you were saying, so before we started, I was sharing with them that I've created 26 new classes since I've been here, like brand new classes. You have to look at, it says available 6 weeks into your course. I don't know that going 6 weeks into your class that you would want to do that, let alone to the students. I wouldn't want to do that to yourselves. 6 weeks you're already a third of the way through the semester. If it's on semester, you're almost done if you're on quarter system. So I would never do that. I think, I would just move it. In terms of what the question asks, I'd wait till the next semester.
Elaine?
Yeah, just to build on what Lee was saying, I think, if you're an instructor who continually kind of changes your course, who tries new things, there's always the chance that something's going to go wrong, and so I would just, in fact, right now, I changed the way I did an assignment and discovered it was having a negative effect on your grades. So I have changed the way it's written in the syllabus, saying that it's still that way, except now you can do something additional that will improve your situation. So I guess my general point here is I think you can carefully make changes, but it needs to be in the direction of helping students, in direction of giving them more flexibility or whatever it was, rather than becoming more strict or something that's going to hurt them. And sometimes you have to kind of communicate with them to discover that. I wouldn't have thought of Abby's, for example. The online, a certain day is important to some people.
For me, I teach a capstone class for the seniors. And in the first day, I say, I'm going to throw things at your face sometimes because I just read a newspaper article or I just find, because it's a strategic course and the news impact our decision making, or a good company news come out or the stock market changes, something happens in China. But I make sure that they are never graded assignments. I say, I'm going to assign you a reading assignment from recent news. I just give them questions to answer, but I just never make them like a graded assignment. And I also warn them in the first day of the class that if it is going to be a graded assignment, I promise that I'm going to give you at least 10 days to work on that assignment. If I change my mind about grading that assignment, I just basically give them the heads up in the first classes that I'm just basically talking to them. Otherwise, it is, again, the fairness issue. Am I giving them enough chances to just basically perform well in the class, or just kind of bombarding them with the news? This way, I'm not benefiting them, I'm harming them. So I kind of build my class, but I think the real issue here is informing the student and respecting. One of the values you just put out there is just respecting the students' I think time and effort in a way that we just basically appreciate them, right?
You know, and I would never do this particular introduce a new book, et cetera, in the middle. But I think, consistent with your saying, I teach physiological neuroscience, drugs, those sorts of things. And these are fields that are changing so fast. Can't possibly. I mean, the textbooks that I use are already outdated and they're brand new. They're 2015. And I know some of the material in here is just not right anymore because we got new information. But I do set a consistent set of learning outcomes and how I'm going to assess them, and those don't change. But what I do, though, is I will give them little videos, I'll give them little snippets from The Scientist or other things, and I'll just send it out to them and say, this is really interesting, and it really relates to this material that we were just talking about. And I don't, and they're not graded on it. I simply say, here's an opportunity to learn something that's even more current, changes a little bit about what we had in the textbook, et cetera, and leave it at that. And I've had students come up to me and say, well, what am I supposed to do with that? And I say, they've missed the point. They've missed the point of the opportunity to become a little more advanced. Is it going to affect their grade? And that's the other thing that they want. Well, if you're giving me this, is it going to affect my grade? Can I get more points? No, it's not in the syllabus. It's not the material that we're covering, but I'm giving it to you to stimulate you, to give you a chance to learn a little bit more. I would say 10% of my students are the ones that jump all over that, and they're in my office and they want to talk about that. And they're not concerned whether they're going to get extra credit or not. They're there because they want to really learn. They're getting something that's of interest to them. It's unfortunate that it's so few of the students that will take advantage of that. But I don't assign it. It's not credit bearing. I don't test them on it. But I'm there to show them that this is a field that's really changing really rapidly. And for those that want to benefit, they do. And so that's complete good with virtually no harm to the students in a situation like that. All right, I think we need to move on because we only have 60 more minutes to cover, 4 more cases?
This is
Anytime somebody wants to jump in terms of what do you see as the issue here, or issues, yes, go ahead.
Player, hate the game. That's what they've got to do. That's what they've got to do.
Man.
It's unethical. Like they just, I feel like they should, if they're going to get a favorable evaluation, they should be getting a favorable evaluation according to what they've done before this time. They should not be wanting to manipulate the students to get them.
I would be mad as a student if my professor did this because while you may be getting more favorable reactions from the majority, what about the people that are there that really want to learn and they're not there just because to get an easy grade, or getting an easy grade doesn't help them. So I don't think that's right. I think they should come up with another method to try to improve their standing with the dean.
So improve the game, huh?
I completely agree. As a ABD looking for jobs in my student evaluation, at least from my subjective, I think it does matter, my student evaluations of me when I'm looking for jobs for the next year. I am not making exams easier, though. What it is affecting is my ability to say, yeah, I'll stay on campus till 7 p.m. to meet with you. I'm being more available to them, which I might maybe not do if their student evaluations didn't matter. I'd be like, no, these are the hours I'm on campus. But that's how I'm being more lenient. It's maybe not lenient, but more available to them and more willing to respond to emails late at night. And that's my way of saying, maybe you can give me a good evaluation because I'm here to help you. But I wouldn't be making homework or exams easier.
Eventually, it's going to be counterproductive anyway. If you're teaching a freshman class and you hand out all A's and B's, I got news for you. Your evals may all be 5s, but you ain't going to get tenure. If the dean's going to look at that too, and if you're Santa Claus grading, you're not going to get tenure anyway.
But if you're teaching a very hard course and students tend to just fail this class disproportionately high in high levels, does it change the situation?
If that's the case, I think sometimes you provide a framework for the dean as they're looking at your evaluations, and maybe you can explain this is a required course that everyone needs at, and see if there's. I know they often get to see comparison numbers. Maybe you could identify a better comparison group, either other people teaching that same class or a similar class in the department, and maybe you're not going to change the course, but maybe you can try to provide a framework for why your evaluations aren't what you want them to be.
But do you think this happens?
Oh yeah, I know the evaluations for my courses that people hate are lower than the courses they like.
No, I was going to say, just sit on my head. But from a student's perspective, I'm ABD going on drama as well, so I have mixed emotions about this. But from a student's perspective, I keep thinking that, well, and maybe this is just naive, that if you're in the profession of teaching and educating, I find it kind of disturbing, if you will, to think, and I'm sure it's just because, like you said, it's the game, but I would think an educator is going to care about his evaluations and students' progress and success way before his tenure. So in my mind, I find it a little disturbing that after 7 years, which is typically the tenure mark, you suddenly care about the evaluations of your students. It just seems like the whole way you should have been learning and developing and changing and flowing and all this other stuff. So to me, I sit back and go, well, hold up here. You waited till tenure? Like this is when you suddenly, because it's in your self-interest, why are you an educator? You should be an educator with the whole goal of success in your classroom, and that should have occurred from the beginning. So that's just my sense.
I agree with everything you said. I have a question, actually, more so than an answer for this. Because I'm teaching for the first time, I was worried about just like actually what you said, just being available to the students, and I want to make sure that they perceive me as approachable and somebody they can contact if they have problems. But then I end up answering emails at 9:30 after my child's asleep, and it's just absolutely, I don't think that what I should be doing, but I am doing it. And then my undergraduate students in my lab tells me that other faculty would offer extra credit for students who do fill out evaluations. Where do we stand on? I mean, is that okay to do? Because I feel like that's such an so that's in itself an incentive. So I may not be changing my homework or my grades, but I'm telling you that if you fill my evaluation, you get like something for it. I don't know what you filled out. Maybe you just like trash me your evaluation, but for the most part, it seems like students will take it as something that's positive for them. So therefore, the outcome will be more positive. Where do we stand? I mean, as a new, teacher, that's reported to me by undergraduate students in these universities.
Well, actually, we've seen some public suggestions come out of certain offices as to how do you improve the number of students who actually complete student opinion surveys.
Phil, I actually just wanted to reach out. One of the comments that came out of the online discussion was that the ethical dilemma here was really the process of measuring evaluation, not what the teacher should do or not do in the classroom. So actually flipping the conversation to the dilemma of, on the other side of using student evaluations to measure, to evaluate effectiveness as a teacher is really the ethical dilemma more so than a teacher teaching to getting better evaluation. So I just wanted to share that with them.
Can I address both of those issues, I guess? In terms of the teaching aspect, by the time you get to pre-tenure, there's a pre-tenure review. You should have already gotten a heads up that you are on track or you are highly derailed. Right? You will know very clearly in your third year what you need to do to correct it by the time you go out. So that's sort of the one thing. But if you do face this issue, and say you do have classes that are very difficult, exercise sciences in our department, and they have certain courses like exercise physiology, that's really difficult, and when we do see faculty who are struggling, not necessarily to get good eval, but just struggling to really teach the material in a way where it becomes more palatable, then it becomes incumbent upon us as those who are already tenured to tell them, you need to meet with us, or them to seek out one of us and figure out what can I do to better fix the situation, so that not necessarily get better evaluation, but so that people can retain, the knowledge more. And through that, you will get the better evaluation. So that's sort of the one thing. But in answer to your question, this came up in our department. It's like, if you only have 10% of, an 80-person class filling out your evals, that's 8 students. And typically those that fill it out,
the happiest or the angriest,
are either the ones that really like you or the ones that really hate you. So then you, by de facto, have a U-shaped curve, anyways. But so we started offering several things. One of which is extra credit. But the way I actually offer it, I offer extra credit to my class. The way I do it is because I can't see who does it, but I can see the percentage of the class that has filled it out, and it won't affect. The extra credit I offer doesn't affect more than 2% of their entire grade. Okay, it's less than 2% of their entire grade, but man, they'll go for it because anything is interview. It's a win-win, and I don't sell it as you're going to help me out. I sell it as it's your duty to actually do it, and I'm encouraging you to do it. And if it means I have to give you extra credit to do it, then I'm doing it. And I went from a 15, 16% response rate to 80, 90-something% response rate, right? And what I do is after you do and it's like at 50%, like once 50%, because you can see what percentage responded. Once 50% hits, I think it's like 1% at 25%, 2 points at 50%, then 60%. Then it goes 0.5s all the way up, but they can't get more than 5 points. 5 points in a course that's worth 800 points is nothing, but they'll do it. So it came up, well, is it ethical to do that because now you're incentivizing, and so I'm a person who does a lot of surveys. We do that with survey response. We incentivize it by saying, offer $1 or we'll offer some type of other incentive. It's the same format. They're filling out a survey, you're incentivizing it. So there's pros and cons to this. It's just a matter of, whether or not you yourself can frame it correctly and you can live with your own approach,
And like you were saying, I think it's helpful to tell the students why evaluations are done, how they're used, versus just the stock email they may get that they probably don't pay attention to. Because I'm not sure if they realize that it's useful information, or it can be useful information for improvement. And
exactly, that's how I couch it. I couch it a lot. I really pay attention to what feedback they give me, and I actually use it. I mean, I really do use it.
Yeah. That's a little different from what we're faced with here, though, and that's cutting back on homework, and lightening up on the midterm exams. These are, here you're dealing with, the harm here is that you're not properly evaluating the student's knowledge and competency. I mean, that's bottom line, okay?
And the assumption...
And so you need to be saying, for me anyways, it's like, that for me is a significant harm. I am telling students that, in fact, they're doing better than they actually are. Or I'm unable to really evaluate the students in terms of what is their actual level of competency. So I could be completely misleading these students as well as the institution relative to the quality of learning that's going on among these students. For me, that's a big harm. Okay.
And also assuming, I'm sorry to cut on you, but also you're assuming that the students are happy with easy courses. why do you just basically underestimate the abilities of the students and just lower your standards and assumptions about the students? I think that is also harming the students.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt
you. You don't know whether, in fact, cutting back is actually going to improve your
Yes.
evaluations in the first place.
Yeah.
You honestly don't know that. And so you're creating a fair amount of harm for what might necessarily be virtually no good at all. I mean, that may not benefit you. Your evaluations may not change at all, but you've done a significant amount of harm. So, I mean, if you want to sort of cast this issue in those sorts of terms, for me, it's a no-brainer to say, no, I don't cut back. I keep the standards where they are so that I can justify, and I can, the ratings that these students are getting, and they're based upon good metrics, good rubrics, good assessment tools, et cetera. And I mean, the issue is these student opinions being used properly for a promotion tenure criteria. That's a whole other issue. I mean, that's not something that you can actually deal with in this context. That goes to another level.
I think piggyback on your comment on the content, you also have to realize if it's a course that that specifically meets certain accreditation standards, if you're under some kind of an accrediting body, you have. It's not a matter of making sure the content is there. So because you have to make sure the content is there because they need that knowledge base. So the reassessment, I think, needs to come in terms of this scenario of how you can better, what assignments you can retool, to make sure you can deliver the content in a different manner that might be, more constructive. It could be something that, well, this is the way my professor always did it, and, it might not. That was 20 years ago.
I'm going to end this because we got 3 more to go, and I think number 5 is going to be an interesting one. 4 is they're all interesting. But
you want to skip to 5?
So let's go on. Well, no, let's go to 4 because I think maybe we can. That one may generate some good discussion, but I think we can do that a little more quickly. So let's look at number 4. So what do you see as an issue or problem or an ethical concern here relative to technology? Yes?
Depends what kind of classes you're teaching, right? So if you're teaching undergrad classes, then you know that the students are normally on campus and their availability is a little bit easier. If you're teaching graduate level classes, many of these students work. So I think you need to be more flexible with students at the graduate level. Not that you shouldn't be flexible with students at the but I think that should be a consideration. What is the population that I'm teaching?
I don't think you should ever just kind of scrap the office hours. If anything, you should reschedule them for a later time of the week or even just the day, just to still have options for them. Maybe give multiple times since you know that they're usually available at that time. And if you change it, there might be less availability of students to be able to come. So you might want to get like 2 different office hours for that week. I don't think you should ever just completely get rid of office hours for the week.
Did you have your hand up? No? Okay.
I think it goes back to whether the syllabus is a contract. And so if at the onset you say to the students, these are my expectations of you in terms of these are the assignments, these are when they're due and they're held to that standard. If you also say, these are my office hours, then you're also expected to be there because that's what you say. So in my mind, if an unforeseen circumstance comes up, then that's different. But to deliberately schedule something for that time, then in my mind, I don't think that's fair to the students.
A part fairness, respect.
Yes.
But a part of what we do for the university is service too, and so that does require the committee meetings. That I'm not always in control of when the meetings are scheduled, and that.
Well, and this gets to the commitment, conflicts of commitment, and balancing your time, which is one of those key issues. But yeah, go ahead.
And that's what I was going to say too. Did we schedule the appointment? Did we schedule a meeting, or were we on a committee that someone else scheduled it? We didn't have a choice. But I think your responsibility to the student is to let them know in advance, so they don't show up at your door saying, no, you said this is what time you'd be here, and you're not. But if you can notify your students that, I'm sorry, this is come up, I will not be in my office from this time to this time. If you need to make an appointment, maybe I might be able to work something out that we can reschedule a time that's not my posted scheduled hours, so that way, because we missed this time that I was unable to make, so I'll work it out to work with you. I think that's where your responsibility lies too. So if you do miss time, you need to make it up somehow and notify the students.
Elder Lane.
Throw a monkey wrench in this a little bit. The university requires office hours, so obviously I have them as well. But I've begun to wonder in current times how useful they are, because in fact, all of us know with closest office hours, you may get a student or two stopping by the day before the exam. That's it. Okay. What they do is email you, and email access along with the option to make an appointment would seem at this point in time much more practical and legitimate almost than these posted office hours. And I was just wondering if anybody else agreed.
There was in the class, because I know that I've been in a class before where you'd go to office hours every week and there'd be a line, because it wasn't something they could easily email about, because it would just be too confusing to try to do it over technology. You don't really understand what the student's asking or what the professor's trying to answer. So it really depends on the class for that point as well, just because sometimes being in person and be able to draw things out to show someone is a lot more able to be understood than in an email.
Yeah, I agree, because I'm having students come either, the day before the exam, and then otherwise it's email. It's all email. There's why I'm in my office during my office hours, I have no idea. No one knows it's me.
I'm just a TA and not an actual instructor for a class, but I TA for psychology statistics, quantitative methods, and yeah, the majority of my students don't come until right before the test. But I do have students that do come during my office hours. Maybe it's just one, maybe it's two, maybe it's just one a week. I don't ever have a line. But when I get my reviews, they say that they appreciate that I was there every single time that they needed me. And as a student, when my professors say they're going to be somewhere and then they're not, it makes me not respect them. So I just think it's really important to be there for your office hours. And I think that saying, answering emails is obviously important, and saying if you need to set up a time outside of my office hours, that's important too. But if you say you're going to be there for office hours, I think it's really important to actually be there.
Yeah, I agree with basically what everyone's been saying. It's more about communicating to your students that you aren't going to be missing that and making up those hours. I am always in my office during office hours, but I have met more students non-office hours than I have during office hours and responded to more emails than I can count. So I don't know if they, at least in the class that I'm teaching, I don't know if they appreciate the office hours. It's during the day when they probably have other classes anyway, which is why I say email me, we'll schedule another appointment. But I think in the end, it is just your availability in general. And are you willing to meet with them at all on campus? And are you responding to emails? I have that in my syllabus too, how quickly I will respond to emails and when I will respond to emails.
I've got some large classes. I have one class that's 150 in drugs and behavior. And each semester I poll them, how many of you are working 20 hours a week? How many of you are working 40 hours a week, or et cetera? And I now know that the majority of the students in this class anyways, 75% of them are working at least 20 hours a week, and about 30% are working full-time in addition. So these are students that come in, they get their classes, and they're gone. And so I to be respectful for them, I have to open up, and like many of you said, I have office hours and I'm always there. But I also make arrangements. If the students can't come during that time, I say, email me and we'll work out a time for you to come. And I like several of you said, I get emails at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm up at 5 in the morning and I'm still answering them. Okay? So again, it's balancing your time, being respectful, making yourself available. And my students comment on it too, that they know I'm always there, whether it's email or I make up a special time or I'm there during office hours. So I think the key for all of us is do what you need to do to be respectful and help your students in a way that's balanced. I mean, obviously you can go crazy with some of this, but be respectful about it.
And can I add to Elaine's point of, it's usually more email now. I've opened up with Adobe Connect and Skype because that's still like an office meeting, but it's synchronous, so it's not email, so we're not missing each other. But that has alleviated a lot of the working students' concerns because they are able to still have that face-to-face time. But
look at the policy too. The requirement at ODU is 5 hours. You must be in your office 5 hours for office hours. And I front load my office hours at the beginning of the week, and so I just train my students that when you email me, even if during office hours, let me know because I may not be here if I have a conflicting meeting. I just put those aside, but there might be a conflict. And I said, and if those hours don't work for you, give me 3 options of what would work for you, and then I will answer. I'll look at my schedule, and it's just like you're making an appointment. So you can be flexible and at the same time still maintain the required 5 hours.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Teaching in your area of competence. Okay, well, we'll give them another minute to read it first, and you're first in line. Second. All right, look, everybody's smiling mostly, looking up. Okay, go ahead.
Unfortunately, you can't control the ethical and moral decisions of others. You have to make decisions based on only you and your own ethics. So unfortunately, I would have to say no, because if I can't teach that course and I don't feel comfortable teaching it, you're just going to have to say no. Unfortunately, hopefully you're doing all the other things that you're supposed to be doing and you won't get labeled as that person. But, I mean, people will talk about you no matter what you do. So at least you can walk away knowing that you did the right thing.
Your job, your students. You have to pick. And what's more important depends on your teaching philosophy, doesn't it? What do you pick?
So I'm probably very naive, and I obviously don't have a position in academia yet, but I know that if I want the best for my students, that if this is the type of university, this is what my department does when I'm working, I would want to leave that department that does that because they don't want the best for their students. And if that's what I want, that's not in line with what works for me as a career. So I would, if this has been going on for years, I would probably consider leaving the university.
I think I'm going to be very confused as a young professor. What's my area of competency? So I feel like as psychology graduate students, psychology is so broad, right? So you've got some exposure to a lot of areas of psychology. I'm not a cognitive psychologist, but I've taken a class. I'm not a quant person, but I've taken a lot of stats. But I'm in a developmental lab, but am I developmental only psychologist? Can I only teach developmental? Can I teach 317 statistics? Maybe I can. I'll be very confused, and I don't know who to turn to answer those questions. Would that be the department chair? Who will decide if I'm competent?
And that's a very good question, and it's sort of at the heart of this issue. Okay, how do you determine what your competency level is, and how do you determine what it is that should be the level of knowledge and skills that the students derive from this particular course? What is that? What are the learning outcomes? And if you don't know them, then you perhaps need to seek some advice from somebody who has taught the course, or hopefully you got somebody in the department that can give you that sort of insight, maybe even serve as a mentor or as an advisor as you go forward. So I think for me, part of it, if I'm in this situation, I have to get somebody to help me to know can I teach this course at the level that it's appropriate? And we don't know what this is, whether it's a 200 level course, a 400 level course, or whatever. But I need somebody to help me to know whether, in fact, I could teach this course if it's not one that I've never taught before. So I think that's something you need to do, and that's being respectful to both yourself and to the students that potentially you might be, and to your department, that obviously needs the help. If the assessment is, oh my God, I've got to spend 100 hours and learn a whole variety of new knowledge, etc. Well, then I'll go back to where you were, and I'd say, I'm sorry, I'm just not at that level of being able to do this. And if I spend 100 hours trying to prepare this course, my other courses are going to suffer. I'm not going to do the job right in the areas that I do have the competency.
I think I would have a series of follow-up questions too with whoever I'm talking about the issue with, including, is the course required for students where if they don't get it that semester, I'm delaying graduation for, an entire class of students? Or is there someone that does regularly teach it that maybe they bought out, but they're there as a resource? So if I'm somewhat familiar with it, I could still have access to an expert to bring my students up as I'm teaching it. And I would wonder too about, it says if you don't teach it, someone even less qualified will. And I guess I would question that assumption a little more about, okay, maybe there's not someone on staff right now, but can we find a new adjunct faculty member where this is their area of expertise? Or I would kind of ask a lot more questions before I would probably make a decision.
And that obviously would involve the chair, in terms of helping you to make determinations. Is there somebody, available who is competent, has taught it, or can actually help and be brought in to help to teach the course? Yeah, so there are clearly some questions to be answered in a situation like this.
And I believe also it depends on whether you're a seasoned faculty member or a new faculty member, because as a new faculty member, even though you're teaching a course in your field, you're going to feel really not very effective in your first courses, because Dr. Phil said there is competency but also instructional effectiveness. You're not going to be as effective in your first courses teaching as a very junior faculty. Actually, I want to just reflect on one my experiences. My husband was just getting his PhD from Old Dominion, so I was in Philadelphia just finishing ABD, almost done with my dissertation, and we needed to be here for him to finish his PhD. And I just called area colleges. I called Norfolk State. They said, can you come in like 15 days? I said, yes. What am I going to do? They said, you're going to teach 4 preps. And I said, oh my God, what am I doing? So I have taught maybe 2 courses at Drexel as a TA or a graduate student. And we need money. I need my husband to finish his PhD. And I said, yes. Then we came here. I have like less than maybe 3 weeks to prep for 4 courses. And I'm in the classroom. And 2 of them or 3 of them I was more familiar. But with one of them, it was kind of labor relations. Exposure is very limited. History information is very limited. And I had the toughest time in that classroom because I felt so inadequate in knowledge, in experience. And at the end, my evaluations were horrible. And I just felt really bad in the classroom because, you feel so bad in so many levels because you feel frustrated. You just basically feel like you're not teaching at the best level to your students. And after the semester, the department had just called me in his office and said, this class didn't go very well, did it? And I said, it was horrible. And he said, you're accepting this? Yes, because, I was not qualified to teach this class. And at that time, though, I needed to be here, and I made the decision, but it was not the best decision at all. But we just face some circumstances that we just basically find ourselves in these situations, and we say yes, without just thinking about the consequences of it. But the personal experience, the no was going to be a better decision because I felt really bad at the end.
For me, though, it's not just a matter of knowledge of the subject matter. It goes back to what Dr. C was saying. It's not just the knowledge of the subject matter, but also being able to effectively instruct students on the subject material.
Yes.
But also to assess their mastery of the material. And if I have a steep learning curve, you know, you're going to see that in my delivery of the content. You're going to see that in my assessment instruments. And so that is something that I would struggle with, and you know, and maybe more so than others, I feel much more comfortable saying, no, I don't feel like I can do a good job. I'd rather not teach. You know, of course, that not everybody has that flexibility.
Yeah, there are times where you just don't have a choice.
Well, I mean, you did point out in here, I am the student's best hope. They've got an even bigger idiot lined up behind me. You know, there's the scene in the movie Glory where the colonel tells Matthew Broderick's guy to set fire to the town, and he says, that's an immoral order, I'm not going to do it. He says, fine, we'll decide that at your court-martial after your troops are placed under my command. You know, and Broderick tells him to do it after he realizes, okay, this is a crummy situation, but they're going to get an even worse situation if they don't have me. You know, and plus, you may surprise yourself. You know, we talked about things that we don't like in instructors. Probably one of them a lot of us don't like is the person who's been teaching the exact same thing with those yellow notes for the last 25 years. You might surprise yourself. Yes. They might not be as big an idiot as you think. And like we're saying here, if you tell the council, okay, I'm going to need some help. You know, maybe you need to, you know, instead of doing 2 other classes, can you just give me 1 next semester? Can we bring in an adjunct assistant or somebody else? Is there a training course you guys can send me to? There may be ways you can ameliorate this and, you know, help reduce the problem.
But, you know, what you first started off with is, you know, looking at this, do good and minimize harm.
Right.
And that's kind of where you started that.
The worst harm coming.
Right, so, you know what, maybe I'm not going to do a great job, but boy, I'm going to do something a whole lot better than this other person would. Okay? So, and again, we get stuck in these kinds of situations. That's life. I mean, and sometimes we would love it to be all good and no harm, you know, et cetera, but we're oftentimes stuck in. And that's why I put those ethical principles up, because we have to do these things. We've got to gauge them and then come to a decision, but know as much as we can what the impact is going to be. What is the potential harm and what's going to be the potential good if I decide to go this way or go that way. And if you do it consciously, you do a good job of assessing it, then that's the best you can do.
There's also another potential good to yourself. I was in your situation as well. I was creating a course. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. And it was a cultural heritage tourism management class. I'd never taught it before, but I've had some exposure to it, a reading or two. And, you know, I'm like, well, if I were to have a class on this, what would I want to know? You know, and it was really an exercise throughout the semester of finding out new knowledge and new ways to teach something that I honestly didn't know, but found out a lot more about, and then ended up really liking it, you know, and then making that class my own, and then not letting anyone take it away from me. You know? Like, I worked hard to do this. You know?
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yes.
So, if you are forced to teach a class that you do not have adequate knowledge of, how does that play out when you do have your evaluations? When your evaluations are bad, your student evaluations, and then you're being evaluated for tenure?
You are able to, you should have the opportunity to actually explain why your evaluations are the way they are. It could be the first time it's being taught. It could be, the course was given to you at last minute.
Yeah.
You know, you do have some leeway to explain that in your annual eval when you're submitting your paperwork. So there is some room there to explain it.
And it's not guaranteed that your evals will be bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that you had a great energy when you were learning that you loved cultural or whatever that class was. And so that is often contagious, as y'all know.
Okay, let's move to the last one.
This is really tough. This is really tough. Oy.
One's clear.
Actually, there are several different situations.
There are like 3 different scenarios.
Yeah,
Yes, there are 3.
We could take each one.
Yes.
And I think we should because
They are different.
they have their own unique characteristics to them. So we'll just start with the first one about the student having suicidal ideations and thoughts.
Doesn't that first one kind of depend on what the policy is at the university? First?
Well, if the university has one, yes, that's something that you should consult. But is that the only source that you use to make a decision as to how to proceed?
Well, no.
No, I mean, I've been faced with this more than once in my career. Seriously.
Yeah.
What if the university's policy is not in line with your ethical considerations, your personal morals?
You have to sleep at night. I don't have to answer the question based on, can I sleep at night by this decision?
So can we just discuss this? If there is no clear policy in the university, what would you do?
I didn't have a situation. I had a situation once. I actually used to teach in school for many years, and it wasn't that the student had said anything, but other students contacted me, and a student had made a post on Twitter saying that if he killed himself, would anybody care? You know what? I took that as a suicide threat, and I did everything I needed to do because if something happened to that child, would I be able to live with myself? No way. I actually met with a student that actually told me of the situation. It was 11 o'clock at night. I called my principal on her cell phone and told her what happened. They sent the police to his house. So, you know what? I was able to sleep that night knowing, I mean, the parents were pissed. But you know what? If their child was dead, and I would never be able to live with that.
I think the very standard clinical questions apply. Like, okay, you've expressed, suicidal ideations. Do you have a plan? Have you taken any steps to carry out that plan today? That's, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, industry standard.
That's not your job.
Yeah.
It's not your job to determine any of that. Your job is just to know that there's a problem and you need to send it to the authorities that take care of that. That's
Well, would you ask those questions?
No, it's not my job. I'm not going to know what to say.
Questions and then you tell someone else.
Now we're getting to it.
This is the first time.
Me too.
I would have no clue.
Yeah. So you get those answers and you pass that along to the appropriate authorities.
Okay, that will have some significant consequences, won't it?
Okay. Depending on their answers.
Well, but if you're bringing in authorities to step in, to try and mediate what you consider to be the potential loss of a life, which is this individual, okay, that's going to, for that individual, that's going to set up a whole sequence of events and consequences to them. And some of them, their reactions to that may be as horrific as their suicidal tendencies. I know. I've dealt with 2 of them in my professional life. Exactly that situation, yes.
I struggle with this a lot because I am actually in clinical psychology. So I would have to be wearing 2 different hats, being a clinical psychologist, but also reminded of my role as teacher professor. So I've never taught and encountered this situation yet, but it's something I think a lot about because knowing the clinical pieces of what questions I'm supposed to be asking as far as that goes, but then having to also balance that with, well, I'm a professor in this role, where blurring of the lines is something that I struggle with when thinking about this type of situation.
So you're having a problem with, this isn't my responsibility.
Right.
My role
but
here is
also
as
my
a teacher.
profession is
But then as a human being, on the other side of that, I'm not just an instructor, I'm also a human being with some, but that again gets to the question was asked. What's your personal values? What are your morals? Where do you see? If you see you've got no obligation to this person, like, tough luck, buddy. I'm just interested in how you do on your exams and quizzes. And that's my role, okay? Well, then you could just let that person go on and not be concerned. But I think most of us in this room would probably not be in that sort of mode. Would want to be thinking about how do we help this person? Is there really a sense that there's an immediate sense that this person may kill him or herself?
I agree with Lauren, actually. send them on their way.
Mhm.
But it does mean that you send them to the appropriate professional to
Right.
take on the clinical role. You send them to the counseling center. Here on ODU's campus, there is something called a threat team that you can contact. And so someone else should play that other role.
Right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
But being knowledgeable of those resources to turn the student to them, yeah.
I agree that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking questions to delve deeper into the topic, but I would offer to walk with them to the counseling center, and if they didn't go with me or go, I would definitely call and take whatever next step I had to. Not as, I don't want to say as serious, but not as deadly as suicide. I had a student who was telling me about a friend who was in an abusive relationship, and I think I would be more on this, not sure what to do if it was herself telling me she was in an abusive relationship, and then I wouldn't know what to do or what actions to take other than like go talk to the counseling center and let me walk you there. But this happens, and I don't know what else to do other than walking them there and giving them all of the tools that they could use. And if they didn't do that in front of me, reporting it.
What if the student refuses to use the services? Would you just basically, I think there is a legal concern here. For example, students are 18 and above. We cannot just basically contact this is legal bind on our part. We cannot contact their parents to inform about them. And we see that the student is not willing to use the services, and there is harm to be done to the student. So here, there are the clash of legal boundaries versus ethical concerns. So what would you do?
Do everything you can up till whenever it's that point where you can't legally do anything else. I mean, you've at least done everything that you can control.
Well, I think that's where that threat team, this is a relatively recent phenomenon on the campus, 5 years maybe.
Yeah.
And after like Virginia Tech incidents and all of those. So there is someone that you can contact on this campus at least for a situation like this.
Well, I had one just a year ago, a student in one of my classes, my first approach was to walk him over to the counseling center because he clearly was having very significant problems. We sat there, and then he bolted. I mean, he took off. He just ran out. And then I didn't see him in class for 2, maybe 3 weeks. Okay? And I'm really worried about, but I let the counseling center know. They knew who he was. I said that he was having some problems, and that's why he was here, and he bolted. He came back to see me in my office, and it was terrible. I mean, he really looked like he was just about there, ready to either OD or do something very injurious. So at that point, I called the counseling center, the threat team, and the threat team then contacted security. Security came and actually got him and talked to him, and then they made an assessment. And this is where you get professionals to do it, because even though I'm a psychologist, I'm not a clinically trained psychologist in this area. So the extra security police came, they did an assessment, they brought him to one of the treatment centers, and they did a triage on him, and they actually put him into a treatment program because he was that bad. 6 months later, he came back to me, and I was scared to death when I saw him waiting outside of my office because I had no idea. And he says, "You know what, I hate your guts, but you saved my life." He said, "If you hadn't taken those steps, I probably wouldn't be here." Okay? But the point of what Elaine was saying, you have to use the appropriate expertise and resources available to you to handle a situation like that. But I couldn't just walk away and say, "Tough, that's not my problem. You know, I'm here to teach you. I'm not here to take care of your life's issues." So, but I think part of it is knowing what resources you do have. I think that's a key part, because you will have, hopefully you never have one of these, but the likelihood that you will have people that are in serious problem in your class is real. And so know what resources are available at your particular institution. I think that's being respectful and responsible. Know what you should be doing, what resources are available, and know what your level of competency was. And I knew what mine was. I can't deal with this, either legally or professionally. I can't deal with it, but there are people who can. You wanted to?
I was just going to say kind of what you touched on the end, that it's also an issue of competency too. I think that, knowing what the policies are and the legal bounds of your profession as far as what you have to do as far as like a professor is much different from someone who would be like a clinician. So I think knowing like where those limits are and then the resources that you have to take or that you utilize on campus to help those students, because the minute I think that someone, it might be easy for a psychologist in any profession to have some of that knowledge, but to step outside of that and start asking those types of questions that you may have some type of knowledge about, it crosses, I think, a boundary of competence.
We go on to the next one.
Oh.
Okay. What do you do if your third-year medical student confides that another student is stealing narcotic drugs from patient supplies and wants you to help his friend without busting her out of the program?
Yes, it could happen. Again, this is legal versus ethical.
I think I'll take the legal route. It would be best to take the legal route in this case. I'm going to report to the appropriate authorities.
We have an integrity office here, so I'll call the Office of Integrity Academic. Well, I don't know if that's academic integrity, but they'll be the first people that I'll think about to call and ask for advice. They're always very responsive immediately with any issues. So.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about narcotics being stolen, you're dealing with a major federal offense for which there are federal laws and state laws that clearly apply in a situation like this. And again, this is another one of those things, being competent, knowing what those laws and policies are that you may become involved with, I think is critical to becoming a good professional. Know all these policies, know what the rules are that apply. So again, I'm saying there clearly is a legal mandate here.
But it's hearsay because you didn't observe. So legally, this is inadmissible in court as if you were to report. So what is the DA going to do with this? They can't do anything with this. There's no evidence. Well, that's why I'll talk to the integrity person and see as a teacher what I can do. I'm not the narcotics enforcer on campus.
You are now.
So simply because you don't have direct evidence, you just look the other way.
No, I'll call the integrity office and see. I've been at somebody else's report. What if the friend is lying? I feel like there's a lot of. I could harm the person who may not be stealing narcotics by calling the police immediately and say, "Jane's stealing narcotics from my lab. Come and arrest her." I need to find some sort of evidence. Then I don't know. I'm not an investigator. Again, yes, I would like somebody else to help me.
Like, this is when you go to the chair and you say, "This is what was presented to me, so you take over."
Passing the buck.
Passing the buck. I'm gonna walk back to my office and continue my day.
Go on.
Can we also think about the, it says that a student confines with you, just trusts you to just basically with some critical information. I know there are some legal issues with this one, but the student comes to you and you just expose the student and whole circumstance to others. So legal bind is important. There is a federal, just possibility of a federal crime. So what would you do?
In that situation, now I would think about, is there a contract of confidentiality between the student and I? And I don't know that that's even a part of the profession. That anything you say to me in this room is confidential. You know, I think that would come into play, that you're not necessarily held to that. If the student discloses something like this, then you have to take appropriate action.
I would think I would just have to consult someone else too. I mean, just say, this is the information that's presented. I mean, you don't have to necessarily say the person's name. Like, you know, you might want to start interviewing everybody in the class because obviously something's missing. If something's missing, then the investigation is going to happen. But it does need to be reported in some way, shape, or form.
If something's missing, that's good. Because you can prove that something.
Did you want to? Did you? No.
Yeah. Let's do the last one because we
Elaine?
only got 5 minutes.
I'll just say that I this person is stealing, how, what's going on exactly. And that's not something you ought to be doing. That someone in that program should be doing.
Yeah, I would think that that person's now an accomplice too, so you need to let them know, like, if you have knowledge of this is going on and you don't report it, it could have significant consequence on that student that is reporting. If they don't do anything about it, then they're like, oh, well, they're going down instead of me, so they might be willing to go forward with it.
Well, in most medical centers and medical universities have counsel. Okay, and counsel can provide advice in terms of how to deal with what is a serious legal issue. Okay, I know I was at UCSD School of Medicine for a number of years. Okay, and so we had lots of cases that would come up on a variety of different things. And both faculty and students and physicians had access to the counselors. You could go in, okay, and describe either a mythical, well, let's say that this particular kind of thing is going on. And they would ask you directly, are you telling me something that you really know directly, or is this just hypothetical? Hypothetical. And you could, yeah, I mean, they're under no obligation at that point to actually take action, because you're telling them this is hypothetical. This is not real, okay? But it can give you some insight into how you should be approaching this if this was real, okay? So somebody was talking about an integrity officer, but medical centers have counsel, because there are all kinds of medical liabilities and da-da-da, and these places are loaded with narcotics and devices, et cetera, that are under all kinds of federal regulations. And they have a full-time staff that are just there to help you to be dealing with potential issues. In fact, they would be the ones to step in if, in fact, they found out that there was narcotics missing on the floor. Okay, then they would actually bring in the police and they would go through a complete investigation.
Well, I think what the one nuance to this particular scenario for me is also that, unlike the earlier one, it's kind of like, well, I have to do something now, right? I know this student is potentially in danger now, whereas this one gives me a little bit more time to investigate and to seek outside sources of advice for how to deal with it. So, I think the responses are a little bit, in that case, I think a lot more factors can come into play, and your responses might be a little bit more nuanced because you have more time to consider what the right thing is. But it might be more sleepless nights than you planned for at the beginning of the semester. So, but I think the time dimension.
Can I just I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering what happens if you report it to appropriate authorities and the student that has reported to you backtracks and says, I never said that?
Yeah, well, I think Elaine is right on target. At this point, I think you need to instruct the person who's telling you, this is your issue. You're the one with the information. You need to be moving forward with some sort of steps on it.
Could I just put a twist on it? What if the student, because when students, I think the student's motivation here is to get your help to save his friend from being just basically taken out of the, it is kind of an altruistic motivation. Then you're just basically scaring the student. It's a federal crime. It could just have serious consequences. And the student says, I don't want to just pursue this. And I bet they are going to be very scared to just go to a department head to just talk about it. And they say, forget about it. But now you know about it. What would you do? I know, I'm just kind of twisting things, but this happens.
You don't know. All you know is what they say.
It's hearsay.
It's hearsay.
Yeah, that's what you know. It's hearsay. You have no way to know the validity of the accusation.
And what if the friend is really them?
Right?
No.
Yeah.
And actually, the last one is exactly the same.
Yeah.
Really, because it's people telling you about other people.
About somebody else.
You don't have any direct evidence.
It's gossip.
It's gossip. And it's not even, you're not the instructor, they're not your student.
Well, with the third one, I think with all of the online safe sign things we have now, you can say to your friend, like, hey, you might want to double check the papers that you've accepted. Is that what we're talking about, right? Yeah. And they can go to safe sign and then be like, oh, that's right, it is 98% copied from something else. But that, like, you can get evidence very quickly.
There's places that will custom write it.
Yeah.
So that there's no previous record of that paper ever being written.
But how would you?
That's true. Yeah, you can
How you
print it out.
improve that?
There's people posting online, they'll like write term papers on a given subject for X amount of time.
Yeah.
Well, that one, I think your only responsibility is, hey, you might want to check on that student's paper at work.
Doesn't matter.
Or you're done.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty clear cut, easy. It's not a lot of major involvement now.
Yeah.
And you could remind the student A about his or her responsibility to the honor code, because you're supposed to. They're supposed to report it. They know this.
Well, we're exactly at 2 o'clock. How about that?
And originally I had planned that if we had some time for Q&A, but I think our panelists might be amenable to answering some questions after the conclusion of our workshop if you have some really pressing questions. But what I wanted to raise very quickly is if you are attending this event and want this event to count towards the Preparing Future Faculty certificate, please make sure to complete the online feedback form. And if you are planning on submitting your PFF certificate, the deadline is December 7th by 5 p.m. So please take note. You can hand deliver hard copy or send electronic revisions to me via email. For those of you who are unaware or need more information about the PFF program, on the tableway in the back there are brochures and blank application forms. Please join me in thanking our panelists and the audience for a very good and lively and very enlightening discussion. I bet a lot of you were not thinking that this is not what I signed up to be as a faculty member, but there are a lot of different issues out there that you need to be addressing. So thank
They
you
are
again.
ready. They are ready.
They are ready.
They are
Now
ready
we
to
have a whole new crew of future faculty who are ready and prepared to tackle these types of issues in the classroom. Thank you again, and enjoy fall break.